November 1st, 1939, German soldiers storm across the Polish border at dawn. Tanks roar. Aircraft scream overhead. This is not chaos. This is precision, confidence, belief. Belief that Germany is destined to win. But this war did not begin in Poland. It began 21 years earlier with a defeat Germany refused to accept. November 1918, Germany is collapsing. 4 years of total war have drained the nation dry. British and French forces push forward relentlessly. American troops arrive in overwhelming numbers. German cities are starving. Factories are silent. Morale is shattered. Kaiser Wilhelm II, ruler of Germany and symbol of its power, abdicates and flees into exile. The war is over. At exactly 11 a.m. on the 11th day of the 11th month, the guns fall silent. But for many Germans, peace feels like humiliation. Something dangerous begins to spread. German generals claim they were never defeated in battle, that their armies were still standing strong, that politicians, socialists, Democrats, Jews stabbed them in the back. It is a lie, but it is a comforting lie. And lies like this do not fade, they grow. In 1919, the victors gather at Versailles. President Woodrow Wilson arrives promising a new world, a world where wars are replaced by words. The League of Nations is born. Empires are dismantled. New countries appear on the map: Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, Austria, Hungary. But borders are drawn with rulers, not people. Millions of ethnic Germans now live outside Germany, trapped in foreign states. Germany itself is punished. Its army reduced to 100,000 men. No tanks. No air force. No submarines. Worst of all, Germany is ordered to pay £6.6 billion in reparations. Money it does not have. To Germans, Versailles is not peace. It is humiliation carved into law. And when Wilson returns home, his dream collapses. The United States refuses to join the League of Nations. The guardian of peace walks away. The League is left toothless. Germany becomes a democracy, the Weimar Republic. On paper, it is modern and progressive. In reality, it is fragile. Street violence erupts. Communists battle nationalist militias. Assassinations become routine. Then comes 1923. Hyperinflation. Money becomes worthless overnight. Savings vanish. Middle-class families are destroyed. People carry banknotes and wheelbarrows not to get rich but to buy bread. Trust in democracy evaporates. Extremists promise order, promise strength, promise revenge. Among them is a man with burning eyes and a violent voice: Adolf Hitler. Hitler is an outsider. Born in Austria. A failed artist. A lonely drifter. But World War I gives him purpose. He fights bravely. Wins the Iron Cross. And when Germany collapses, he collapses with it. In Munich, Hitler discovers his true weapon: speech. He does not argue. He attacks. He blames Germany's suffering on enemies within, on Jews, on communists, on democracy itself. In 1923, he tries to seize power by force. The Beer Hall Putsch. It fails spectacularly. Hitler is arrested, sentenced to prison, and given something far more valuable than victory: time. In prison, Hitler writes Mein Kampf, My Struggle. It is not just a book. It is a blueprint. Germany must rise again. Jews must be removed. And Germany must expand east by force. When he is released, Hitler changes tactics. No more coups. He will destroy democracy using democracy. For a few years, it looks like he has failed. Germany stabilizes. The economy improves. Extremist parties fade. Then everything collapses. October 1929, the American stock market crashes. The world plunges into depression. In Germany, 6 million lose their jobs. Factories close. Families starve. And once again, democracy has no answers. Hitler does. In January 1933, President Hindenburg makes a fatal decision. He appoints Adolf Hitler as chancellor. Within weeks, the Reichstag burns. Hitler blames communists. demands emergency powers. They are granted. Opposition parties are banned. Trade unions destroyed. Fear becomes law. When President Hindenburg dies in 1934, Hitler abolishes the presidency. He merges it with his own office. He is now absolute ruler of Germany. The world watches and says, nothing. Germany is rising again, but it is not the only nation preparing for war. Far to the east another empire is about to test the world's silence. After the horrors of World War I, the world was desperate to believe one thing, that war had been made impossible. The League of Nations sat in Geneva, a symbol of hope, diplomacy, and collective security. Disputes, they promised, would be settled by a debate, not bloodshed, but behind the speeches and resolutions. The great powers were exhausted. Britain and France were scarred by trenches and mass graves, millions dead, an entire generation lost. Their leaders made a quiet vow: never again. Armies were reduced, military spending slashed. Preparation for war became politically toxic. Peace, at any cost, became the guiding principle, and that belief would soon be tested. The first open challenge to the post-war order did not come from Europe. It came from Asia. Japan had emerged from World War I stronger than ever. It had defeated Russia. It had expanded its navy. It sat among the world's great powers. But Japan had a problem. Its population was exploding. Its industries were expanding rapidly. And it had almost no natural resources, no oil, no coal, no iron. Japanese leaders believed survival demanded expansion, and their eyes turned to Manchuria, a vast Chinese territory rich in grain, coal, and minerals. In September 1931, Japanese officers staged an incident, a fake railway explosion, and used it as an excuse to invade. Within weeks, Japanese troops overran Manchuria. A puppet state was created. China protested. The League of Nations investigated. Months later, the verdict came: Japan was condemned. Japan's response: they stood up and walked out. The League of Nations had spoken, Japan ignored it, and the world did nothing. With Manchuria secured, Japan pushed further. China was weak. Divided by civil war, nationalists under Chiang Kai-shek fought communists led by Mao Zedong. The country was exhausted before the invasion even began. In 1937, Japan launched a full-scale war. Cities were bombed without warning. Civilians were slaughtered. In December 1937, Japanese troops captured Nanjing, China's capital. What followed was one of the worst atrocities of the 20th century. Over 300,000 civilians got killed. Mass rape. Mass executions. The streets ran red. Western warships were attacked. American sailors died. And still no intervention came. The League of Nations was powerless. The lesson was clear: aggression worked. Back in Europe, another dictator was taking notes: Benito Mussolini. Italy in the early 1920s had teetered on the edge of chaos. Strikes, land seizures, political paralysis. Mussolini promised order. In 1922, his fascists marched on Rome. The king blinked. Mussolini was handed power. Once in control, he moved fast. Opposition silenced, democracy dismantled. But unlike Hitler, for now Mussolini delivered results. Jobs were created, infrastructure modernized, crime crushed. Italy looked strong again, and that image mattered. Across Europe, leaders watched with unease and sometimes admiration. But Mussolini wanted more than applause. He wanted an empire. Mussolini's target was Abyssinia, modern-day Ethiopia, one of the few independent nations left in Africa. In 1935, Italian forces provoked a border clash. Then they invaded. The Ethiopian army fought bravely, but it was no match for modern weapons. Italian aircraft dominated the skies. Poison gas was dropped on villages. Gas warfare, and after World War I, was used anyway. Emperor Haile Selassie traveled to Geneva. He stood before the League of Nations and begged, if this aggression is not stopped today, it will reach you tomorrow. The League imposed sanctions. They were weak, incomplete, ineffective. Italy conquered Ethiopia in 6 months. The emperor fled into exile. The League of Nations had failed completely. Why did no one stop them? Because Britain and France were broken. Their economies had never recovered from World War I. Unemployment was already high even before the Depression. Their empires were overstretched, their militaries outdated, and above all their populations were terrified of another war. British leaders dismantled their army. France retreated behind concrete fortresses. Imagine a line. They chose defense. They chose delay. They chose hope over action. But hope is not a strategy. By 1936, the message to dictators was unmistakable. You can invade. You can massacre. You can ignore international law, and no one will stop you. And soon Hitler would put it to the ultimate test. On April 26, 1937, the sky above a small Spanish town turned black. Bombers appeared without warning. Sirens wailed. Civilians ran. Within hours, Guernica no longer existed. This was not an accident. This was not a mistake. It was a message. Spain in the 1930s was a nation divided against itself. For centuries, it had been ruled by kings, landowners, and the Catholic Church. Power was concentrated in the hands of a few. The majority lived in poverty. In 1931, the monarchy collapsed. A republic was declared. For the first time, Spain attempted democracy. But democracy arrived too late and too fragile. The new government tried modest reforms: land redistribution, workers' rights, limits on church power. To the right, these changes felt like revolution. To the left, they felt painfully insufficient. Strikes erupted, land was seized, churches burned, Spain was cracking. In February 1936, Spain held an election. The left united in a popular front. Socialists, communists, liberals, they won narrowly. To conservatives, this was a nightmare. They believed Spain stood on the edge of communist takeover. Inside the Spanish army, deeply conservative, fiercely Catholic, senior officers began plotting. Among them was General Francisco Franco. Franco had been sidelined, sent to the Canary Islands, far from power, but now he was waiting. On July 17, 1936, Spanish troops in Morocco mutinied. The next day, Franco flew to join them. He declared a nationalist uprising, a crusade to save Spain from communism. Garrisons across Spain rebelled. The country shattered overnight. Workers armed themselves to defend the republic. The government called for volunteers. Spain descended into civil war, but Franco had a problem. His best troops were trapped in North Africa, and the Spanish Navy remained loyal to the Republic. Franco needed help, and there was only one man he believed would give it: Adolf Hitler. Hitler did not hesitate. Within days, German transport planes began flying, soldier after soldier, weapon after weapon. It was the first large-scale airlift in military history. Franco's army crossed into Spain. Mussolini joined in eagerly. Italy sent tens of thousands of troops, hundreds of aircraft, modern tanks. Spain became a laboratory. Germany tested its newest weapons, its tactics, its pilots. The Luftwaffe's Condor Legion arrived. The future of warfare was being rehearsed. The Republican government begged for help. Britain refused. France hesitated, then refused. They feared one thing above all: the European war. So they declared non-intervention. No weapons, no soldiers. Only the Soviet Union offered limited aid. And volunteers. From around the world, men and women came to fight fascism. Teachers, dock workers, students, the international brigades. They were brave, but bravery does not stop. Tanks. Spain became a nightmare. Both sides committed atrocities. Priests were executed. Political prisoners disappeared. Villages were wiped out. But something new emerged. Civilian bombing as a weapon. Madrid was bombed relentlessly. Barcelona followed. And then came Guernica. German bombers attacked Market Day. They targeted civilians deliberately. 6,000 dead. The world was horrified. But still, nothing happened, despite fierce resistance. The Republic weakened. Its forces were undertrained, under-equipped, and divided. Communists wanted discipline and victory. Anarchists wanted revolution. In May 1937, they turned on each other, fighting in the streets of Barcelona. The damage was fatal. Franco advanced steadily. By 1938, Republican territory had been split in two. International support dried up. The brigades withdrew. Madrid stood alone. In March 1939, Madrid surrendered. Franco declared victory. Spain was silent. Hundreds of thousands were dead, millions traumatized. A dictatorship had been born. And internationally the consequences were devastating. The democracies would not fight. While Spain burned, Hitler was watching and planning. Even before the war ended, German troops were already on the move. On August 23, 1939, the world went silent. In Moscow, two enemies shook hands, Germany and Soviet Union. Hitler and Stalin's sworn ideological rivals signed a pact that stunned the planet. A non-aggression agreement, but hidden inside it, was a secret, a plan to divide Europe like a corpse. Poland was already dead. It just didn't know it yet. For years, Britain and France had tried to avoid war at any cost. They let Hitler rearm Germany. They watched him remilitarize the Rhineland. In 1938, Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain returned from Munich holding a piece of paper. "Peace for our time," he said. Within 6 months, Hitler broke the agreement and swallowed the rest of Czechoslovakia. The illusion was gone. But still no war. Europe held its breath. Hitler never wanted peace. From the beginning, his obsession was Lebensraum, living space. Germany would expand eastward. Slavic peoples would be crushed. The land would belong to the Reich. Poland stood in the way. But Hitler remembered 1914. A two-front war had destroyed Germany once. He would not repeat that mistake. So he turned to the unthinkable. Stalin. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact shocked the world. Publicly, Germany and the USSR promised not to attack each other. Secretly, they agreed to divide Eastern Europe. Poland split in half. The Baltic states marked for takeover. Finland threatened. Stalin bought time. Hitler removed his greatest fear. War was now inevitable. At 4:45 a.m., German battleships opened fire. Not on soldiers. On a polished military depot at Westerplatte. Simultaneously, German troops stormed across the border. Tanks, infantry, aircraft screaming overhead. This was not invasion. This was blitzkrieg lightning war. Polished cavalry charged tanks. Cities burned. Refugees flooded the roads. Within days, Poland was collapsing. But Hitler still waited. Would Britain and France finally fight? On September 3, 1939, Britain declared war. France followed. The announcement echoed through radios across Europe. People stood frozen in their homes. For the first time in 21 years, the world was at war again, but something felt wrong. On the Western Front, nothing happened. British and French troops waited behind fortifications. German soldiers waited on the opposite side. Months passed. No major battles. No offensives. Civilians began to hope. Maybe this war could still be stopped. Then, from the east, the second blade fell. On September 17, 1939, the Soviet Union invaded Poland from the east. No declaration of war. No warning. Poland was crushed between two empires. Its government fled. Its army dissolved. Mass executions followed. Officers shot. Intellectuals erased. Poland vanished from the map. Winter arrived. Europe was technically at war, but strangely quiet. Behind the scenes, everything was moving. Germany prepared its armies. Britain mobilized its empire. France clung to old strategies. Hitler was already planning the next strike. Not east, west. This was not like 1914. This war would target civilians, cities, entire populations. Genocide was no longer a rumor, it was policy. Technology had changed. Ideology had hardened. There would be no gentleman's war. Only survival. As 1939 ended, Europe stood on the edge of darkness. No one yet knew about Auschwitz, or Stalingrad, or Hiroshima, but the fuse had been lit. And there would be no stopping it now. World War II had begun.